Excellent. Here we go. So everybody, we're live broadcasting to the internet right now. My name is Mark Barthelmy. I'm the founder of OOOOOjOOOO, and I'm here at the ISDC conference with a bunch of students from around the world. The topic of today's discussion is space-ish projects that you can do during high school. And we have a number of guests with us today. First of all, here at the conference, we have, first of all, Jared Head. Are you in the frame? Here we go. Yes. Jared is a docent at the Griffith Observatory here in Los Angeles and has worked with kids on doing a lot of cool stuff with Kerbal Space Program and building rockets as well. We're also joined by Eric Gever, who is an engineer at Boeing and is really skilled at 3D design and printing. So that'll be exciting. Robotics as well. And FIRST Robotics, exactly. And we have also Nick Gillin. Am I pronouncing Gillin correctly? Nick Gillin, Nasalt, who Nick is the one that made all the cool animations for the Return to Mars videos that you guys have been seeing over the past couple days. We're also joined on the internet. You have to click over on the camera for these. First of all, by Paul Warren. Paul is joining us from Stanford. He's a freshman at Stanford studying computer science, and he has some really cool projects that he did in high school to fly satellites, if I remember correctly, a CubeSat on the international, am I wrong, Paul?
Pretty close. Biology experiments.
So hold on just a second, I'm sorry. Excuse me, I'm sorry, we can't talk at all, okay? So, sorry, we have to be very quiet so that we can hear everyone on here. So thank you very much. And Paul, go ahead. Can you tell us a bit about your project that you did during high school?
Sure. I was lucky enough to get the chance to send some biology experiments to space. I sent a microbiology experiment aboard STS-135, the final space shuttle, when I was a sophomore in high school, and then sent a C. elegans experiment aboard the SpaceX Dragon flight to the International Space Station when I was a junior in high school.
Good deal. Finally, we're joined by Scott Manley, who is the Internet's greatest resource for understanding how to do Kerbal Space Program. Have anybody here been playing Kerbal Space Program over the past few days? And did you try it yourself? And what sort of a thing did you build at the beginning? Nate, can we get some camera over here? What did you build at the beginning?
I made a small rocket, and it didn't go very high, but it was good playing the game. Okay, it's a fun game, right? Yeah.
So Scott is actually the Internet's expert at how to do Kerbal Space Program. So Scott, we have a bunch of kids here from around the world, and they've never tried Kerbal Space Program before. What is Kerbal all about, and why is it something interesting for them that you'd recommend that they check out?
Well, Kerbal Space Program is a simulation of rockets, and it lets you build anything you want and fly anything you want. I'm just going to perhaps do some screen sharing to show some pictures here, because I've got a few. This may take... Oh, there we go. Yeah, it is by a bunch of guys in Mexico called Squad. They basically took the idea of building rockets by bolting parts together and applying a physics simulation to them. And people build really crazy things. But people also build equally crazy things in real life. And on the left you see this little rocket chair, but NASA actually were developing something for recovering astronauts from the moon, which bears a striking resemblance to these things. And there was some crazy ideas for how to re-enter the atmosphere and catch rockets. Well, that wasn't a NASA concept. But Kerbal Space Program lets you do all of these things. It's built on top of... built on the Unity game engine. It has a physics simulation that models every single individual part in your rocket. So that's why sometimes one half of your rocket goes off in one direction and the other half goes off in the other direction, because you didn't struck them together strong enough. And whenever that happens, don't panic. It's all part of the fun, as far as I'm concerned. Oh yeah.
So for now, let me turn down the microphone here. So how do you suggest, Scott, that students who are interested in Kerbal Space Program, how do they start? Should they start by first going and checking out your videos? Should they start by trying to do it themselves first? If everybody's getting excited here, what should they do?
Yeah, doing things yourself is the best way to learn, right? Don't wait for somebody to try and teach you something. Try it. As long as you're not trying to do something that's dangerous, you'll be fine. And in video games, it's not dangerous, right? You can build a rocket, it can explode, crash into every building ever, and nobody gets hurt. Except you might laugh a little too hard because it's kind of enjoyable. So I strongly advise people that are interested in it, they download it, build a rocket, try flying it, build a bigger rocket, find that it doesn't go anyplace. Build a rocket with wings, find you can't control it. That's really the way to go. I have several tutorials to actually really take you through it step by step, but after those, really, you can go off in all sorts of directions to make things that you want, or try to replicate reality in interesting ways.
Fantastic. This is tricky. The sound in here is tricky. I'm running the soundboard and trying to host at the same time. Speaking of building rockets, we've been talking about building rockets in the digital world. Jared is, I don't know exactly your experience in putting rockets together with high school students or what have you, but I think a lot of students here are fascinated by space. A lot of students have been trying a few different things at this conference. What about rockets? Can they build rockets? Can they go out right now when they get home, put something together like this and blast it off?
Well, not something like this. This is a bit of a big rocket right here. And what you can do is you can go out and you can start with what we call hobby rocketry or model rocketry. We sort of have very small rockets that you can go out. We always recommend doing that because that will kind of teach you whether you enjoy doing rocketry or not. And after you've done that, then you can make the commitment to go into what we call high-power rocketry. And that's when we're getting into these big boys right here. And these rockets, they are capable of seriously injuring and destroying things. So you do have to be very, very careful when you're operating these. But if you're in high school, there are a lot of programs that you can actually join that will let you fly these big high-power rockets, and you can even get the licenses that you need, even at a high school age, to fly these rockets.
So if somebody wants to get started, what do they do? What's the first thing that they do?
Well, the first thing that you should do, you should definitely go to a hobby store and buy a rocket, find your closest place that you can safely launch these rockets, because you can get into a lot of trouble if you don't safely launch your rockets. And then go out and give it a shot. Usually it's on weekends, so you can go out and you can kind of fly your own rockets. And then if you want to go further with it, there's places online or in person where you can actually buy these high-power rockets. And these often will have you ending up in places that are very far out, like here in California. We have to go out to the Mojave Desert to launch these kinds of rockets. And then once you get out there, you can actually work with them and fly them and make bigger ones, because once you make one, you want to make a bigger one. And you want to put more in it, and you want to have a bigger engine, and you want to put 2 engines together, and now I want to have 6 engines. So it kind of is one of those things where if you really get into it, the possibilities of how far you can go with it, you can literally get all the way up to the point where the only thing separating you from NASA is the fact that the side of your rocket doesn't say NASA on it. So,
awesome. Well, if anybody has questions, keep them in the back of your head. I want to talk real quick to Eric. Eric, what do you do at Boeing? Are you building rockets like this?
I'm a flight systems engineer, so I design spacecraft, actually. I design both commercial and military space programs. I actually design how the spacecraft maneuvers itself in space. So we're sending it commands, it's reacting, and we're kind of verifying that it worked correctly.
Why did you become a Boeing engineer? When you were in high school, were you paying attention to space in high school?
I had a huge passion for engineering, aerospace in general. Starting in high school from FIRST Robotics, actually. I was involved in designing robots, similar to robots you would run on Mars, in a kind of competitive setting. And that's actually something I wanted to show you guys today, is a little bit about FIRST Robotics. And I'm still involved with that today. I've started actually multiple FIRST Robotics teams in my local area in Huntington Beach. And those have taken off, and high school students have been really involved in designing from scratch these huge robots that compete on a field in a really arena game, sporting event style competition.
So, if students are interested to work at Boeing, if students are interested to be aerospace engineers themselves, what do you recommend that these kids do? Should they definitely design rockets? Should they definitely do any kind of other projects? What do you recommend?
Projects are the big thing. So more so than GPA and doing good in math and science in class is important still. But it's really being involved in projects and showing off your leadership skills in those projects. To get hired to Boeing out of college, I was involved in Design, Build, Fly. It was actually a competition where we designed an RC aircraft that would fly it with certain mission requirements. It had to carry certain payloads and go certain distances, that kind of thing. Robotics is also equally important. So those things combined bring you in. Basically, any type of robotics or engineering, whether it's related to rocketry or not, is going to have impact in the space industry. So I highly recommend just being involved in projects.
Awesome. Completely switching gears for a second, out of the realm of engineering and into the realm of media. Everybody that's been watching the OOOOOjOOOO challenges for the ISDC 3D design competition, you've watched some awesome videos that Nick put together. So Nick, you play Kerbal Space Program, and you're able to do all of these things that I can't do because I don't know how to play it properly yet. But how did you get interested to start making movies?
Well, I'm sure we're all familiar with the fact that space is extremely beautiful, and from a visual standpoint, as well as for various reasons. But for an artistic standpoint, it's just it gives many opportunities for beautiful compositions and to actually show people that this stuff isn't just written down somewhere, and it's actually real space. You can stand on the surface of Mars and you can look out, and it's happening right now. There's dust storms raging as we speak, and it's a wonderful thought. So, and because I'm not very good with orbital dynamics or certain branches of science that would definitely help me in the field of space and space travel, I still have this very, very passionate interest in space. And all I can say is, even if you're not very strong at math or science, you can do what you can, the best you can, to benefit something that we can all enjoy.
Well, that's an interesting topic because a lot of the students here are very interested in math and science specifically. And a lot of students that like math and science, they think, oh, video? Something like artistic? That's not for me. I'm a math and science person. So for somebody that does do math and science, who might think that, how do I start doing video or something like that, how would they start? If they think this is something cool, maybe they're a little afraid of it, what should they try doing to give it a shot?
I started just by taking photographs of the stars at night, just going out somewhere where you can see not even many stars, and just playing around with camera settings, exposure settings, and really getting familiar with both the camera and the stars themselves and understanding how you can use them together. That's how I started. However, you can also, in Kerbal Space Program, there's a lot of options of filming your missions and taking screenshots. Anything where you can create content and media, I really suggest, maybe dabbling. It's very fun and it's rewarding as well.
Good deal. So I think we did a good review of everyone who's on the call right now, and now I want to ask students to ask questions to anyone. We talked about rockets. We didn't talk about 3D printing so much. We talked a little bit about robotics. If you want to call up and maybe find on YouTube where we can show some pictures of FIRST Robotics. Video show if you'd like to. So why don't you find that and we'll queue it up, and then we'll just start taking some questions from students. So who has a question about any project that you could do during high school for people who are experts in doing these things about Kerbal Space Program, about anything else? Who has a question? So tell us your name and where you're from, and then ask your question.
Yeah, I'm Soumik Ghosh Maulik and I'm from India. My question is that the place where I live in India, how can I start making rockets? How can I gather the parts? Do I have to buy them online, or is there any local shop which provides us with the parts? And is there any special permissions we have to take? Do you know of any?
That's a great question. So that sounds exactly like a question for Jared, our expert on sourcing rocket parts in India. Jared, what do you have to say about that?
So what's cool is that this rocket I have in front of me, I bought this online, and I was able to build it in my garage in about 3 hours. So that's all it took to build this entire rocket. This rocket can go up about 3 to 4 kilometers, so it's a pretty big rocket. But what you're going to want to do, you'll want to start with small ones first, because obviously you want to make sure, because it is a bit of an expensive hobby, and it can cost a lot of money. So get those little rockets, and then once you want to move on to the big rockets, I would look to see if they have a group in India that would have a sort of process to get you certified to fly these rockets. Because here in the U.S. we have 2 groups. We have the National Association of Rocketry, and we also have the Tripoli Rocketry Association. And they are sort of the bodies that look over and hand out the licenses for rocketry. So they've set up standards that we all of us rocket people have to follow if we want to be able to do it safely. And they have a very good track record of making sure that that safety is enforced. So I think the biggest challenge for you would be going back to India and just finding somewhere that allows you to do this, because I'm not familiar with laws in India about what you can do with rockets, especially once you get into high-power rocketry. But yeah, when you get back, look around, see if there's a governing body of rocketry there, and if there is, call them up, get the info that you need to figure out what it would take to get you certified for your rocket, and then you can go online and actually buy your rocket from companies as well.
And another good thing to do is contact a university that's nearby. If they have any sort of aerospace related activities, probably they're going to already know the answers to a lot of hard questions like that. And also just start searching on Google for a bunch of different topics. What's up? Okay, Rocketry Club of India. So if you just search for Model Rocketry Club of India, there you go. We have it up on the big screen right now. We can't really see it online, but we have we found a link. So we just saw it. If you Google a couple times, you'll probably be able to find something. Wonderful. So who has a question for anyone besides rockets? Say your name and where you're from.
My name is Miguel. I'm from Puerto Rico, and I have a question about video making and picture stuff. So a lot of people, including me, don't know even where to start about how to make videos, how to make them, put music in them, and I find it really interesting. But I really don't know where and how to start, where the programs I can find them, things like that.
So the question is, what do you suggest where I should start, right?
I would suggest starting, the most harmless thing you can do is pick up a camera, either a still camera or a video camera. I started with still images because it really gives you an understanding of just composition, basic, what looks good where. Something might look good better a little bit on the side rather than just right in the center, or something look good really small. So just play around with cameras. It doesn't even matter if it's a nice camera or if it's a bad camera. They're all just doing the same objective, which is capturing image. And you can use a phone camera and just practice. Never stop shooting. I started just with this film camera right here. Is the first camera I had, and it taught me everything I know about image making. So if you just keep making content, and if you keep and you said music as well. You don't know. Yeah. So just listen to music, get inspired by the music, and you can really, figure out rhythm with cuts and you can get more complex. I taught myself almost everything, which would be just through internet. YouTube. I didn't spend a dime on classes or you know, going to special. I taught myself everything. So if you, it sounds like you're really interested in it. So I would suggest, you know, go online, look up tutorials on video editing software. But most importantly would just be take a camera everywhere you go and don't stop shooting and don't be afraid of shooting anything.
Now there's another Scott Manley actually probably is relatively prolific in terms of cranking out a ton of amazing videos. Perhaps less artistic than functional. I hope that's not offensive to you, Scott. But could you switch it over to Scott's camera? And Scott, you know, you have a completely different production technique that I think is really useful for producing certain types of content. Do you have any tips on how folks can get started with making really good YouTube videos?
Well, I mean, the first thing to consider is that almost everything done in video these days is edited on a computer. So if you have a computer, it's very likely you'll be able to get access to some sort of free software for actually taking the video you shoot and editing it into a complete production. If you have Windows, then there's Windows Live Movie Maker, which is free for most Windows installs. If you have a Mac, then there is iMovie. And there are actually a few other free options out there if you want to look for such things. If, like me and Nick as well, you're wanting to make videos machinima based on stuff on computers, then you have to capture the screen. And you don't want to use a camera to capture a computer screen. You actually want to capture those digitally, and there's software that does that. There's Fraps, Bandicam, Fmpeg. There's a few other options, but look at the software and Google the software and find a computer. You can do amazing things with computers that you have these days compared to what you had to do, 10 years ago.
So it sounds like the common theme here is just start doing it. Play with the tools that are out there, and I don't know if that's true for rockets necessarily. Eric, I think you were looking at showing us a video about, is it about FIRST Robotics? And I think we have it queued up.
Yeah, I have a video I want to show you guys about what tens of thousands every single year. I'm actually involved in this about 6 months out of the year. It's a sporting event of the mind, I would call it. This is called FIRST Robotics. This is a competition that's taking place in many different countries across the world. And it's as I said, I call it a sporting event of robot development. But the students, high school students, build these robots over a 6-week period every year in high school with the help of mentors and engineers. And they compete with it at competition. And this is the video from this year that I put together showing these robots in action. You look at all those space series, of course, one of the other creators remote robots for space exploration. At the same time, taking some applied skills. I got Sarah's going to see back up. These are the students that I mentor actually control the robot from their position back there. These students work on building the robot from the ground up, pretty much from scratch. Acting human players to not fall into the robots. That's what's happening there. Trying to figure out how to get these robots to accomplish a certain goal. And the goal for this year happened to be taking these very large balls and shooting them into these upper targets here. We're actually working in an arena full of thousands of people to accomplish this goal. And there's a lot of focus on team effort and things like that. But the big point here is that there's so many different aspects of robotics and building of these types of these machines. That's wonderful to space exploration and everything like that as well. Is the video there? Okay. I took film here from a lot of different perspectives. This was actually on the robot itself as it's driving around. And I know it got a little bit laggy once you moved over to the there. But as you kind of see, it's mechanical, it's the programming, it's designing the human interface, ground telemetry, the strategy, the concept of operations, we call it in the space industry, and then the actual execution. All of that we need to use when we're launching rockets and space vehicles as well. And the only difference here is this one happens to be on land. But these are high school students who, over the course of their high school careers, have been, building these things. And this is a well-established competition, and it's something that in countries around the world you could participate in if you got your school involved in it. The way it really gets started is that you have to approach the administration of your school and say you want to get interested in starting FIRST Robotics. And then finding sponsors. It's basically a huge team effort, lessons in management, that kind of thing as well, that will really get your team flowing there. So kind of wanted to show a few clips of how all that works and show some high school students that are already excited about building robots and thinking about their future in space exploration and everything. So that's all I want to show.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Now we have a question for Paul, actually. This is a question from a student from India. Who's asking the question? Yes. So say your name and what your question is.
Hi, I'm Channa. I'm from India. Actually, I wish to design a satellite which is less cost, and I want its internal structure, and I want more about space and a new idea from NASA and as well as from OOOOO.
So you want to design a satellite?
Yes.
And your question is, during high school, how can you try to design?
I'll try my level best. I want to try first of all.
Good, perfect. So Paul, how can she possibly get started?
Sure. So one thing that I can definitely say is that anything you can do right now would be really, really, really helpful when you get started on this. If you want to immediately get started on building a satellite, you can, again, Google is a fantastic resource, and there are a bunch of different CubeSat designs that are actually, the 3D files, the computer-aided design files, are available online. And a lot of times when you're a student, if you contact the people, so there are two main computer-aided design softwares. There's Autodesk Inventor and SolidWorks. Of those two, if you are a student, more often than not, you can actually download those softwares for free. If you download those softwares, you can find CAD files of cube satellites, which are small satellites that fit in about this size, and you can see how people have actually designed those softwares previously. If you wanted to get more hands-on experience, it really depends on what you wanted to do with the satellite. So a satellite has a lot of different parts. There's mechanical, there's electrical, there's the purpose, where you're going to put a camera on it and take photos of the Earth. What are you trying to do? Once you figure out what you want to do with the satellite you're building, it's important to just do little building steps, like everyone here is saying. Just find something that you can start with and do now. If you want to do mechanical stuff, join a robotics team. If you want to do electrical stuff, figure out how to use an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi, play around with microprocessors. If you want to go ahead and figure out how to put everything together, start finding some friends who are interested in the same thing. Find a model, find the equivalent of, find the local university, find other people who are interested in what you're doing, and just come together and start doing a project.
How to make any robots and all. So how can you get started?
That's a good one. So let me turn it down. Turn it down. There we go. So we have a question about robots. I think this is going to be for Eric. So you were talking about the robots that we saw in the video, right? So what were you saying?
Actually, the robots we saw in the video were very complicated, but many of us don't know anything about robotics. So how can we start making our own robots?
I think that's a great question. So when I start teaching the students robotics at the high schools that I teach it at, those students have no experience whatsoever either with robotics at all. They saw, oh, that looks pretty cool. They saw some parts moving around, have no idea how any of that worked. They've never used tools before. I was surprised that some of them didn't even, use a power drill before. So as an engineer, my job was to try to teach them how to use all that equipment, and so I actually started a 10-week training session, set of training sessions at their school to do so. If I was going to recommend, and I've helped other engineers and scientists and folks train other schools in the area to do so, and have given them modules and things like that. Other folks have said that there's tools to look at online. I think hands-on is really the best approach to do things like this. If you learn how to use power tools and learn how to solder, learn how to use CAD materials. I saw today a lot of you were working on playing with Tinkercad and just how to design something virtually for the first time. It's as easy as that, in my opinion, if you put in the effort to do so. If you can find someone in your local community that is willing to come in and help out a team of students who want to learn, even if they know nothing to start, finding a mentor, that sort of thing. You really can, with the motivation, learn all these things in the course of just a few simple months. And then from there, it becomes a matter of experience, learning how things can fit together and failing a few times, right? Having things break and figuring out that, oh, well, these parts just didn't go together as I expected, or, we just didn't make this part strong enough, and it broke. And if you learn from hands-on experience, that's the best way, in my opinion, is to kind of figure these things out for yourself. So.
Wonderful. Now, Paul, I wanted to ask you about a really cool initiative that I know you guys are doing over at Stanford. And this is a global thing that a lot of, I think, high school students from around the world had participated in. The Balloon Challenge, if I remember the full title of it. Can you tell us about this this event that happened last month and what's going to happen in the future and how the students that are here can maybe put together a team and get involved?
Sure. So the group that I'm a part of, the Stanford Student Space Initiative, ran something called the Global Space Balloon Challenge last month. The goal was to get as many teams from around the world to sign up and launch a high-altitude balloon in the same weekend. We had 100 different teams sign up from over 40 different countries. We had elementary schools all the way up to people who have been doing high-altitude balloons as hobbies for 20 years, 50 years. We would connect the people who had a lot of experience with the teams that didn't. We posted how-to guides. We posted where you can buy the materials online. We offered our experiences and said, if you have any problems, feel contact us. And our goal was just to create sort of a global community of people who launch high-altitude balloons and just see if we can maybe break a world record of having the most balloons launched in the same weekend. And like Mark said, a large number of people who participated were middle school and elementary school and high schoolers. The teachers would just get a class together and do it together. We had high school kids who just wanted to do a fun project, and they just did a high-altitude balloon. I see you guys have the Global Space Balloon Challenge website up right there. So if you Google Global Space Balloon Challenge or go to balloonchallenge.org, you'll be able to see the video and pictures of what happens, of the photos that we took when we launched high-altitude balloons to up to 100,000 feet or higher.
That's awesome. Now, did you have, can you turn that down a little bit? Great. So did you have a lot of high school students in other countries participating, and what was the cost of putting together something like this, Paul? If somebody's interested to do this, I heard that helium is really expensive these days. So how much roughly does it cost? I know it depends on the equipment that they send up, but roughly, if they're looking to do something and have it not be too expensive, how much do you think it's going to cost?
All right, to address the two parts of your question, one, the cost. It was somewhere on the order of $250. But what a lot of countries would do is email us and say, hey, that's a lot of money, we can't quite put that around. And we would send them an email that they could send to companies and organizations in the area. And this is a fantastic opportunity for students to get hands-on experience. It's a great way to get people to do a cool project. It's a great experience overall. And companies and organizations and schools love hearing about those things. And more often than not, the people who would email us worried about finding the money for it would be able to find that money through the companies and using an email that we gave them. To answer the other part of your question, we did have a lot of high schoolers from other countries. We had Ghana, Australia, Spain, Europe, pretty much everywhere in Europe, Kenya, and a bunch of countries in South America as well. And we just reached out. We had people who would go back to talk to their high schools in the past, and everyone from around the world was really, really, really excited to be a part of this. Again, I see you guys have the Global Space Balloon Challenge website up there, balloonchallenge.org. If you do want to get involved or you want to learn more about what a high-altitude balloon is or how we can get something to 100,000 feet to the edge of space, feel free to visit that website. Feel free to, again, Google it, and feel free to keep that website in mind around April of next year when we run this again.
Let's see. Ooh, turn that down. There we go. So we don't have we have sound, but we don't have a camera over here for some reason. But we do have a question and I think an invitation from India.
Yeah, so I'm Raghunandan Kumar from Planetary Society of India. We are not affiliated to Planetary Society of USA directly, but we are there since last 10 years. I have just heard, and it's a great opportunity. Actually, it was in my mind whenever I read about this Tony Phillips launch, Earth to Calculus team, they're launching this high altitude balloons. We actually made an attempt to do that, means on our own. Even I could contact some people who sell these high altitude balloons. But what I want to say in simple words is that I invite one of you to India to help us launching this high altitude balloon, and we are ready to pull up the resources which are required. We want to invite a person who can help us to come to India, and we'll pull up this the resources required and all. So
that sounds fantastic. So Paul, if I guess I'll connect to you guys, would you be possibly able and willing to send some of your Stanford Student Space Initiative folks out to India to help some high school students put together a cool project?
Yeah. We'd definitely be interested.
Oh,
great to be put in touch.
I think Ojo was successful in doing this. If we can really materialize this one, I think I'm really thankful coming here.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much. So let's see. I think we have. How much time do we have, Nate? 9 minutes. Okay. So let's go for maybe a couple more questions. Go ahead.
Yeah. My question is that about rocket fuel. The most important part of the rocket is the rocket fuel. So maybe the rocket can withstand 1 or 2 flights, but the fuel, once it gets exhausted, we have to buy it, and it's very expensive. So I googled something yesterday about rocket fuels, and there are many videos stating of different ingredients for rocket fuel. So my question is, what is the best composition and ingredients to make a rocket fuel that would be low cost and high thrust and can send our rockets in space?
So I think half of the people on the panel are excited about answering that question. Paul, you're laughing your head off. Does that mean that you want to take this one?
No, all I can say is that when you find out, please tell me.
Scott, you studied aerospace engineering and astrophysics, I think, in school. Do you have any guidance on this one?
The only thing I've heard, and I'm really not an expert, is there's a sugar-derived fuel. But with any fuel you make, it's very dangerous to try and make any fuel yourself because it's basically a bomb, right? And not only do you risk hurting yourself, but you also risk attracting the kind of security forces' attention.
Eric, you got anything on this one?
Yeah, sure. So as was described before, making your own fuel is incredibly dangerous. If you wanted to make your own fuel, there are a lot of folks who go with the initiative to create what are called hybrid rockets. And hybrid rockets actually combine solid fuel and liquid oxidizer, or the opposite, solid oxidizer and liquid fuel. When you're making propellant, you need 2 types of propellant. You need the fuel and the oxidizer. And normally a solid stage is what you're going to find in these high-powered rockets here. They're going to be burning until all the propellant is gone. There's no way to control the fact that they're just going to be burning, constantly until that's gone. Liquid fuel is what we see it, on like a NASA launch would maybe use liquid hydrogen and oxygen, or say like a methane type of thing. Liquid is very difficult to work with and a lot more expensive, in my opinion, because you have to pump everything correctly. So you're going to have to create the pumps and the pressurization and get the right fuel mixtures. So in terms of hobbyist rocketry, you know, solid is definitely the better way to go. But the problem again is that trying to make your own solid propellant, incredibly risky. The biggest risk is that if you came up with the right fuels to mix, you could end up creating air pockets inside, and when they don't burn exactly correct, and when you create air pockets inside, that will create an explosion, effectively, because you're going to create effectively new nozzles inside where you don't intend to make those nozzles. I think that the safest thing to do for sure is buy off the shelf. If you really want to make your own, you can get some black powder and put it inside a little canister and see how that works. But our recommendation is buy the engine, and the creativity in your end is the rocket structure itself.
So, Eric, I know that you're big in 3D design and 3D printing. All the students here have been doing some really cool 3D design projects for the past few days. In fact, I have winner number 2 of the challenge from yesterday. He designed a really cool pair of radiation glasses. That was an incredible design. I think you saw that one, actually. You remember the one? And, of course, winner from the first challenge right here as well. So all of these students have been doing 3D stuff, playing with Tinkercad for the first time. Very simple tools. Have you guys been enjoying it?
Yeah.
Having fun, right? For the very first time, and you're enjoying it, right? So if people like doing this stuff, what's next? Where do you suggest they go if they just did it for a few hours here during the conference, they had a good time? Where can they go next with this?
Go with 3D printed rocket frame. So you can buy a kit like this off the shelf, but what's the fun in a kit, right? It's a lot more fun, in my opinion, to try to build your own rocket, and if you can 3D print it, that's kind of the best way to do it. This nose cone here, for the most part, is made of plastic. So it's the same thing. It's just that you can 3D print the plastic and kind of figure out what the best nose cone shape would be for your particular rocket. And you can experiment with different types of designs, maybe more of a blunt object, blunt front instead of a pointy front. You can also experiment with the different types of fins to use. You can kind of see this rocket has 3 fins, but sometimes you might see rockets with 4 fins or more, and they might their shape might be different to allow the air to flow over them in different patterns that might make the rocket more stable or maybe spin to create stability, that kind of thing. So the experimentation with 3D printing is really amazing in this way, right? Because if something doesn't work, you can always just try to modify it a little bit in your CAD program, print out another one, and try it again, which in many cases is cheaper and faster than trying to figure out a way to fabricate this in some other method.
So that's a next sort of project that they could do.
For sure.
But they've been using Tinkercad just on tinkercad.com, really simple, awesome cloud-based software. If they find out that they are needing to go to the next level, there's a very limited functionality that this program has. If they want to go to the next level and be able to really do some crazy designs and do some new sophisticated things, what's a good next step after Tinkercad?
Well, you want to upgrade your CAD software. So luckily for high school students, you can get Autodesk Inventor for free as a student. You can get SolidWorks for free as a student. It's a matter of finding the student version copies of those. So you have to go online and go for Autodesk student version or SolidWorks student version. Those are available. For example, in First Robotics, all the students learn off SolidWorks and Autodesk Inventor. Once you make those models in CAD, the next step is you can look into, if you're interested in getting your own 3D printer at home. The 3D printers you saw over in the print lab, one of them is called a Stratasys Objet, and that one is incredibly expensive, but at the same time it produces really high quality prints. The other one was a Robo 3D, and that one's only $700 off the shelf. So still kind of expensive for you as a student possibly to get, but the printers are coming down in cost, and there are some that if you wanted to spend maybe a weekend building them, you can actually build these for maybe just a few $100s. And the return on that investment is incredible given the amount of cost it would otherwise cost to build the same types of objects if you tried to, say, injection mold something or manufacture it from scratch. And it would be a much higher quality. So if you're really into it, I highly encourage you to look into getting your own 3D printer, or at least finding a resource such as a makerspace or a neighbor or someone who has one, I suppose, or a local university that has a print lab. I know, at least in Southern California, there's a lot of universities such as Cal State Irvine that have their own maker spaces and 3D print labs that you can just send a print over and have them print it for you.
So that's physical objects are one function, sure. Physical objects are one function of what you can do with 3D design. Another one that you guys can do doesn't involve any physical object whatsoever, but it's 3D digital objects for use in video game environments or for use in media. And Nick, I think you were telling me from before that a lot of your videos that you produce, you use Kerbal Space Program, but that you also sort of add other stuff to it. Can you tell us about that and how any student here that can do 3D design could potentially do that?
Well, software-wise, I've used Cinema 4D and Maya, but it really depends on what you're trying to do specifically in terms of, for example, I did a film where the Voyager probe that was sent out by NASA in the late 70s, early 80s, in Kerbal Space Program, I recreated that mission, and it went beyond the Kerbal solar system after the mission was completed, and it drifted into several other game universes like EVE Online and Space Engineers and Minecraft. So for those shots, I had to export a 3D model of the Voyager probe that I had created in Kerbal Space Program, and then I would open it in Cinema 4D and other 3D software, and I would superimpose it over footage that I took with Fraps, like Scott had said, over the Minecraft world and the EVE world, so that it would appear that this Kerbal Space Program ship was elegantly floating through the violent space battles of EVE Online. So you can really open up the possibilities, just like the limitlessness of space. There's almost limitless possibilities of what you can do just down here in creating your own universe. So I would definitely suggest. I'm not sure about free. Blender is a free 3D software. So if you Google Blender, it's you can import models as well.
But yeah, as students, as some have said before, a lot of software you can just get for free. So you can find it and ask. Say I'm a high school student and I'd like to have that for free. Probably you're going to get it, I would think. Does anybody have a final question? And then we're going to wrap things up. Okay, here's the very last one. And say your name and where you're from, and then what your question is.
Sir, I'm Karthik from India, and I want to ask a question. I want to practice space medicine when I grow up. And I want to serve the world. So can you tell me the ways where I can introduce space medicine to all students in my school?
That's a good question, and maybe as a member of the Space Initiative, I wonder if perhaps, Paul, you might have been in contact with some folks that do space medicine or can generally give some advice on how students can sort of create some community around space.
I want to continue.
Oh, you want to continue?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And please do connect me to the people who are experts in space medicine.
Sure. So perhaps he puts together some sort of structure and can connect in the context of whatever you're about to tell him now.
Okay, sure. First off, the opportunity to actually directly contribute to space medicine is closer than you think. I flew an experiment on the Vomit Comet, a zero-gravity plane, last month, where we tested medical technology and how we could use it in space. And that was through a NASA program. And I'm also right now organizing another International Space Station experiment where we're testing a treatment for bone loss that results due to space. And this is as a freshman in college. So the idea is there are opportunities out there, and they're specific by country, they're all in the world, and most of the time you have to do a little bit of researching before you can find them. But if you can find hubs of activity in your area, so universities near you, just find people in the area, ideally that you can go and visit. Try not to just send an email and say, I'd love to hear about your work via email. You want to email them, you set up a meeting face-to-face. So find someone who is near you that you can chat with face-to-face about the opportunities available specific to your local area. I can say when you do go to college, when you do want to start making next steps, there are a lot of programs in the world that help high schoolers, that help college students, that some that help middle schoolers. Like my two experiments that I did in high school were for a U.S. national program that was for 5th graders to 12th graders. And so there are definitely a lot of opportunities out there. The problem is that you might have to do a little bit of search to find them. And again, that's why I'd suggest finding people in your local area who can tell you what's happening. As for finding people who are knowledgeable about space medicine in specific, there's something called the Human Research Program. It's run through Johnson Space Center of NASA. And if you Google Human Research Program, so HRP, you'll find the HRP handbook. And they'll have one for each year from like 2011, from 2009 actually to like 2014. And every single handbook is like 70 pages long and details every single experiment that anyone in the world has done that relates to human health in space. So if you want to know, you can find the experts all you can. Again, you can Google them, and if you approach Mark after this and you tell him that you want to be connected with me, I'm more than happy to help you out if you're able to make it here, if I know anyone in your area. But you don't have to talk to the experts to learn about space medicine. There are a lot of resources available specifically through the Human Research Program right there that have all of the information that the experts can know.
Good question. Good question. So I think we should start wrapping it up here. I just want to ask everybody that's on the panel to give us one last thing to think about. Now, the topic again was space-ish projects you can do in high school. Looking for great advice for the high school students here to get actively involved in something. And I think let me start first with Scott Manley. Would you mind giving a few final words?
Well, as I said, Kerbal Space Program is a game. It won't teach you to become a rocket scientist, but it will teach you a bit of rocket science if you play it that way. But other than that, it will be perhaps a catalyst for you to look at other things. Never stop learning. Never stop teaching.
Perfect. And Paul, how about yourself?
Projects are definitely the best thing you can do in high school. I can say that without a doubt. I learned so much more from the projects I did. Space projects, other robotics projects, rocket projects. Every project that you can get on will just teach you a lot more than you'll learn in class, because you'll actually remember it because you had fun doing it. And so whatever project whatever makes you happy, whatever is your passion, if you don't have a passion, this is the time to explore. Projects are fantastic for exploring. And I would suggest just getting out there, don't hesitate, do some research, but don't wait too long, just get started and get started now.
Wonderful advice, thanks so much. Nick, final thoughts for the kids here.
I would say just don't stop doing what you're doing. You'll see yourself just exponentially get better with every project that you do. For my videos, I look back at stuff I did months ago, and it looks really bad to me. And then I know that 5 months from now, I'll say the same thing of something now. So it's kind of just, it looks like your own little space race. You'll have rockets blowing up early on, but we didn't get to the moon on the first try. So just never stop.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Jared, what do you got?
Yeah, to piggyback on that, just never be afraid to fail, ever. My first rocket I ever built blew up midair, and it started raining debris all over the people in the area. And I was devastated that, I'd put all this time and this effort and such a beautiful paint job, and I epoxied it so well, and I put it together, and I spent all this money. And the amazing thing about failure is that once you get over the initial feeling of sadness about your failure will always show you how to succeed. It will tell you exactly what you need to do in order to make something work. And I went back, rebuilt my rockets, and now I know how to fly them. So never, ever be afraid of failure.
Nice one. Eric, final thoughts.
Start small and work your way up, especially when it comes to robotics. I would recommend trying to find small kits such as Lego Mindstorms and maybe Vex Robotics. Those are really small projects that you can do by yourself. on a scale that you can have a measurable impact for in regards to completion. And then as you get more and more comfortable with that process, then start working your way up to the bigger projects. And again, don't be afraid to fail. Make sure that you learn from your failures. You never really learn from success. You always learn from your failures. And then just work your way up more and more until you have a nice huge project that maybe you're working in industry, and that's the biggest project of them all for the most part.
Fantastic. Everybody that joined on the internet, thanks for watching. Scott, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and your words of wisdom. Paul, thank you so much. I'll certainly get you connected with the folks here that were interested to do so. To the guys here on the panel, thank you so much for being a part of it. To the students here, excellent questions. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time. This is Mark from OOOOO. Thanks for watching.